Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how I color graded this CLog footage from this to this, and also from this to this. Alrighty, my name is William Ong and I'm a photographer, videographer, and also a content creator. I'm also a full-time educator. And I'm going to show you how color grading works. So recently, I went to Tasmania for a family trip and I went to visit this lavender farm called Brightstone Lavender Farm near Davenport. It's a beautiful place, massive field of lavender, but it was really dry the time we got there. And also it was in the middle of the summer. So this is what I've got out of the CLog footage. This is straight from camera. For those who are new to CLog is a format that we record videos and they look really flat and desaturated. And it was done deliberately so that we can have high dynamic range, so that we can adjust a lot of colors and contrast later in post-processing. For Canon users, there's a CLog and CLog 3. For Sony users, there's S-Log and S-Log 3 and so on. Anyway, so let's just dive into Adobe Premiere now. Alright, here we are in Adobe Premiere Pro 2022. So for those who are totally new to Adobe Premiere Pro, here is a video tutorial that I recorded earlier. Learn Adobe Premiere Pro 2022 in 1 hour. If you want to follow along, I'll also put the links in the description below so you can download the file and follow with me. Alright, let's get into the timeline. As you can see, I've already made 2 cuts there and just put them back to back. They're really simple shots. They were filmed on a Canon CLog on R6 at 120 frames per second. So that was a really nice and smooth slow motion shot. First of all, to adjust colors, I'm going to go to the tab called Color. You can do so by going to Window, Workspaces, and Color. Alternatively, you can also go to Color and click on that. They are technically the same. Now that we're on the Color tab, we can see the Lumetri scopes, the program window, your timeline, and the Lumetri color settings on the right side. If your Lumetri scopes look different from my window, you can go to the wrench icon, click on that, and turn on Vector Scope YUV, Parade RGB, and Waveform RGB. These are the scopes I'm going to be looking at. So first of all, I don't like making adjustments to the clips itself, especially when it comes to color grading. Personally, I prefer to use adjustment layers on the track above them. To create an adjustment layer, I'm going to go to the project window. So it should be somewhere here. And then I'm going to go open up this one a little bit to the side until I can see the new item icon. I'm going to click on the new item and choose adjustment layer. And your adjustment layer specification is going to be the same as your sequence. You can make changes, but it's not necessary. So I'm going to press OK here. And now that adjustment layer is created, I'm just going to drag and drop into my timeline. I'll make sure that it goes to the track above, and I'm also going to trim it so that it aligns perfectly with my first footage. And also to be safe, I'm going to toggle the log on for the first track so that I don't accidentally move or touch or edit the videos. Now the adjustment layers is the only thing I can select. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to start adjusting the Lumetri settings here. Alright, looking at the parade, I can see the blues are on the high side and the reds are a little bit lower. So I'm going to adjust that by adjusting the temperature. To do that, I'm going to go to the Lumetri color and I'm going to change the temperature a little bit to the warm side so that the parade are sort of aligned right there. You can see that right there now, the blues and the reds and the greens are almost about the same level. That looks a little bit better. It's not a lot, but a little bit better. Okay, now I'm going to start adjusting the tonalities. So there are exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks, and saturation. Let's see what we can do. This time around, I'm going to focus my eye on the waveform. You can see that the waveform has a lot of area for highlights to grow and also a lot of areas for the shadows to go down. In fact, I will try to get the shadows touching around the 10 here, and then the highlights to go roughly around 90. I don't like pushing it too far, too close to the 100, but that depends on different people's preferences. Personally, I'm going to keep it above 10 and below 90. First of all, I'm going to start changing the contrast. I don't want to adjust the exposure just yet, but the contrast is the first thing I would normally do. Alright, now let's push the contrast while keeping the eye on the waveform. So by pushing the contrast a little bit, maybe to about 50, I can already see my highlights also touching the 90. And then the shadows are roughly reaching about 15 zone, which is pretty good. I'm going to push the highlights a little further up, while I'm going to bring down the shadows a little bit just to touch above 10. And for the white, I'm going to push it slightly to the right, and then I'm going to push the blacks a little bit to the left. And that's already given a really simple and nice contrast right here. You can see before and after. At this point, we have sort of color corrected the shots. The shot looks nice and reasonably punchy, and also that's how the lavender farm looked like when I was there. From now on, this is going to be about color grading. Color grading is basically putting a bit of essence, adjusting colors, adjusting saturation of some tones. So to do that, I'm going to start by pushing saturation just a tiny bit there. Don't want to push saturation too much because that's going to push the saturation of the entire image, so I don't want to overdo that. And next, I'm going to change to the Creative tab. In here, there's a lot of lookup tables, which I'm not going to touch in this tutorial. I don't want to use the creative LUTs or the lookup tables. All I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen the clip a little bit by pushing it to about 25. And you can put the vibrance a little bit more and the saturation a little bit higher. And that's good enough for me. Now this is where the powerful part is, by adjusting the tint in the shadow and the highlights. In fact, the lavender farm just need a tiny bit of shadow tint into a bit of the magenta zone. You can already see that by just dragging that into the magenta zone. It's already started looking magenta or purple kind of lavender color. I don't want to adjust the highlight because it's going to mess it up. So if you accidentally adjust that, you can just double click on the highlight to reset the highlight. You can also adjust the tint balance to a little bit to the positive, about 13 or 12 around there. I'm already quite happy with how the lavender feels starting to look like. But there's further we can tweak, which you can find under the Curves tab. This is where a lot of things you can do about color grading your footage. First of all, I'm going to just start changing the curves a little bit. So to adjust the curve, I want to create a point there, but I also don't want to affect the rest of the curve. So I'm going to click here as a holder, and I'm going to come back to this point. I'm going to drag a little bit. As you can see there, it pushes the saturation of the darker tones there. So this is before the curves, and this is when I apply the curves. It's already looking pretty good, but we can tweak even a little bit more. So the next one I want to adjust here is the hue versus saturation, which is just below the curves. What this does is you can change the tonality of a particular color and make it into more saturated or less saturated. I'm going to double click to cancel that. So to have a good starting point, I'm going to use eyedropper, and I'm going to click on somewhere that's a magenta. Ooh, alright, notice that Adobe Premiere actually gave me red or orange instead of the lavender that I want. Because if I actually move it, I can already tell it's going to change the saturation of the red sand. That's not what I want. I'm going to undo that. In fact, I believe this is a point I need to change. But I can't just drag it yet because you can see the curve is going to affect everything else. And it's going to affect the greens, it's going to affect my blues. I don't want that. To make sure that I can only change this, I'm going to drop another point just on the left as a holder. Now I should be able to drag it up without affecting so many others. In fact, I should drag this part a little bit to the left side, because pushing it to the right will make the sand look too saturated. Pushing to the left will make the lavender saturated, which is what I want. That looks pretty good. You can see the before and after, and that's quite nice. Another thing we're going to do is hue versus hue. So this is where we can decide how much magenta we want the lavender to be. We can make it into magenta, we can make it into pink, we can make it into purple, any tone that you like to go for. To do that, I'm going to click on that eyedropper again, and I'm going to click on one of the lavender flowers. Alright, just like earlier, Adobe Premiere Pro for some reason gave me the reds. I don't want to touch the reds, so I'm going to click on the point, and I know this is a point I need to change, so I'm just going to drag that. As you can see now, I can make it purple, like a little bit more lavender feel to that. You can make it blue, that looks ridiculous. You can also make it pink. I'm going to push it a little bit to the lavender side, but again, it's completely up to personal preference. Alright, the next thing is hue versus Luma. So this is basically you can choose a particular color, adjust their brightness. Luma is a brightness. So to do that, I don't think I want to click the eyedropper. I'm pretty sure Adobe Premiere Pro is going to give me the orange again for some reason. I know where I need to adjust, which is somewhere around these tones. So I'm going to click a point there. This will be the point I will be adjusting, but I will also put another point here on the left, one on the right as a holder. Now when I adjust that, I can make them look brighter. I can make them look darker. In fact, what I want to do is I want to go a little bit darker. You can also push it left to right to decide which tones of purple that you want to affect. You can also add another point here if you like to and bring it down further. That already looks pretty good. The only thing now I think is the sky looks a little bit overexposed. To do that, I'm just going to jump back to basic correction, and it's a pretty easy fix by just pushing the highlights back a little bit lower. And there you got it. The lavender farm looks magical. I'm already feeling it might be a little bit oversaturated, so I'm just going to go to saturation and bring it down a little bit, maybe about 1 to 5. That looks more believable purple. And look at that. That already looks really good. I'm really happy with that already. To color grade the next shot, which looks practically the same, I'm not going to reinvent the whole wheel. Rather, I'm just going to copy and paste this adjustment layer. To do that, I'm just going to click on adjustment layer, hold down the Option or Alt key on the keyboard and drag it to the side and place it right on top of the other footage. So I'll adjust the ending point so that it ends exactly where the bottom clip ends. And because I copied the entire adjustment layer, it also brings in the lumetri settings that I have from the other clip. It's actually looking pretty good. I don't think I need to do a lot of changes there. But a couple tweaks I want to do based on this. I want to bring the highlights down a little bit. As you can see, that looks better. I'm going to push the contrast a little bit to the right. And I'm also going to bring the whites a little bit lower compared to the other. As you can see in the parade, this time the red's the dominant color. So I'm going to push it a little bit back to the blue, just a tiny bit. So now the blue, the reds, the green, they're all quite parallel. I think that's already looking pretty fantastic. There are a lot of other tweaks that you can continue and go and work on it if you like to. There are color wheels and match where you can adjust furthermore of shadows and midtones and highlights, which I'm not going to do any of these. I'm just going to double click on that to cancel that. I'm already happy with how they look. There's also another tool which is really powerful tool called HSL Secondary. We're not going to touch it in this tutorial. If you like to add a bit of a vignette, which is darkening of the corners, you can adjust a little bit by dragging the amount slider to the left. Just a tiny bit, looks pretty good. And also for the second adjustment layer, I'm going to select on that second adjustment layer, drag the vignette down to maybe about -0.2 to make the corner slightly darker. So there you have it. So this is a really simple CLog to color grading tutorial. Hope you can try it out and see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed this video and follow me for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next.